Star Wars Episode 7 had a lot of high expectations to meet. It was the first installment in a franchise that had been mostly dead for 10 years. There was a lot of hype around this movie, and a lot of people were counting on this to work. Fans were hoping that Disney would pull off the same success with Star Wars that they had with Marvel. Needless to say, the film didn't do as well as everyone had hoped. Yes, it was a huge box office success, and a large chunk of people were satisfied with it, but creatively, The Force Awakens really didn't bring anything new to the table. One of the biggest complaints about Episode 7 is that it is a complete ripoff of Episode 4. That's something everyone seems to agree on. But, for some reason, some fans were happy with this kind of unoriginality.
He's like, well, the plot felt too familiar. And I'm like, familiar? Like comfort food? Like mashed potatoes, you dumb dick? Yeah, that sounds terrible. A movie made of mashed potatoes.
While others were not so easily appeased. They saw this as cheap and lazy. And from a writing standpoint, they're not wrong. Now, I know there are multiple reasons as to why the writing team chose this approach. A lot of Star Wars fans were still sore after their experience with the prequels, and Disney wanted to play it safe. So instead of risking an original story that could potentially be hated by fans, the writers decided to give the audience 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of nostalgia, almost as if it was an apology letter. But with that being said, there were definitely some things that worked for Episode 7. And I'm going to walk you through what my rewrite for The Force Awakens will look like. I believe there is a way to provide Star Wars fans with both original storytelling and some fun nostalgia, without being a complete cookie cutter of Episode 4. Now granted, I have the benefit of hindsight and I don't have studios hanging a mandate over my head, so please don't see this video as a hate letter to anyone involved in the making of the sequel trilogy. I'm not bashing on Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, George Lucas, or anyone else. This rewrite is just a fun writing experiment for me, and it gives me a chance to work with the series that I have loved dearly since my childhood. This video will serve as part 1 in my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 7. In this video, I'll be covering Act 1 and the first half of Act 2, and in the next one I'll finish up with the last half of Act 2 and Act 3. So early on in the development stages of Episode 7, before Lucasfilm had even sold to Disney, several ideas were being thrown around the table for the franchise's return to the big screen. One idea that stuck was a young Force-sensitive girl becoming the protege of Luke Skywalker and being the main hero of the sequel trilogy. Another idea was to have Sam Solo, the son of Han and Leia, be another major character. George Lucas's original vision for his entire Star Wars saga was to have 3 trilogies that each focused on a different generation of the Skywalker family. In the prequels, the focus was on Anakin and Padme, the parents. In the original trilogy, the focus was on Luke and Leia, the children. And with the sequel trilogy, the focus would have been on Rey and Sam, the 2 characters who would have been the grandchildren. I want to keep that original vision intact, along with some concepts from the first couple of drafts of Episode 7 that I think were better than what made it into the final draft. And this is just a nitpick, but originally Rey was named Kyra, and I like that name a lot better since it means black and Irish. This can allude to Kyra's story arc down the road as she becomes tempted by the dark side like Rey does. So from here on out, we're going to call Rey Kyra. As described by screenwriter Michael Arndt, Kyra was designed to be a loner, hothead, gearhead badass, and the sequel trilogy would have focused on her coming of age and journey of self-discovery. This description of Kyra reminds me of Jim Hawkins from Treasure Planet, and I think that take on Kyra would have been a really good way to have a protagonist who mirrors Luke from A New Hope without being a complete ripoff. Like Luke Skywalker and Jim Hawkins, Kyra is stuck on a planet that she doesn't want to be on, and dreams of the day that she'll be able to explore the galaxy and find her own destiny. But what would help make her character not be a complete cookie cutter of Luke would be to add that fiery streak to her personality. Because she was abandoned at a young age and hasn't grown up with love or kindness, Kyra is mad at the world and grows up to be a rebel without a cause. She acts like a punk. She races through restricted areas, disrespects and argues with authority figures, and gets into scraps with the other scavengers, but deep down, she's hiding a lot of pain and loneliness from never having a family. Now, the character Sam Solo eventually became Finn in later drafts of the script, and Arndt described him as being pure charisma, and a cross between young Anakin Skywalker and young Han Solo. And I think that could work really well in the context of Sam being Han Solo's son and the deuteragonist of our story. Sam could inherit his father's roguish charm and sense of style, but not his mother's Force abilities. Because of this, Sam is a more down-to-earth character, and he shares a tough love relationship with Han that consists of clever banter and snarky remarks. I imagine Sam looking a lot like Jason Solo from the Legends comics, and I can picture someone like Jared Padalecki or Sebastian Stan playing this role. So just imagine one of them co-starring Daisy Ridley as Sam as we move on with this rewrite. Now with those changes in mind, let's get started with the opening crawl. I wouldn't change much to it, but there are a couple of small changes that I think go a long way. Here is the new and revised opening crawl. Luke Skywalker has vanished. In his absence, the sinister First Order has risen from the ashes of the Empire and will not rest until Skywalker, the last Jedi, has been destroyed. While the New Republic squabbles amongst themselves, General Leia Organa leads a brave resistance. She is desperate to find her brother Luke and gain his help in restoring peace and justice to the galaxy. The neutral planet Ryloth has been marked as the First Order's next target. See, now if your story is going to be an epic space odyssey where characters are traveling to different planets, meeting different races, and becoming enthralled in a galactic war, you need to establish some kind of world building. A fictional setting this big needs to have things like politics. Because for the life of me, I could not tell you why the New Republic wasn't doing anything about the First Order throughout the entire sequel trilogy. Why was the Resistance on their own? Why isn't anyone helping them? Why are they the only ones fighting the First Order? Where's the Republic in all of this? What are they doing? Just how much power does the First Order actually have? These were all burning questions that I had at the end of both episodes 7 and 8. And the only reason I was able to find answers to them was because I went online and found out all that information was given to us in the form of prequel novels. That's all information that should have been provided to the audience within the movie itself. An audience should not have to go to another source of information outside of the film to understand said film. And we fix almost all of that with just one sentence. While the New Republic squabbles amongst themselves, General Leia Organa leads a brave resistance. That tells us that the New Republic is too busy getting caught up in their political bureaucracy to pay attention to world threats, kind of like politicians in real life. So now we can gather that Leia had to form this military called the Resistance on her own, and she seems to be the only one from the New Republic who is doing something about the First Order. I'm also deleting the scene where the First Order wipes out 5 planets with Starkiller Base and claim to have destroyed the Republic, but we'll get to that in my next video. Act 1. The opening scene will feature Sam Solo and R2-D2 on an outer rim planet. It doesn't really matter which one, so I just chose Ryloth, but the First Order will launch a terrorist attack on the planet, bombarding the surface with cannon fire from their ship in orbit. Through a live broadcast, Kylo Ren's masked face appears on all of the screens on Ryloth, and he demands that the Twi'leks submit the resources to the First Order or face extinction. Sam and R2 infiltrate the First Order ship and sabotage the vessel, thwarting Kylo Ren's plans. Sam and R2 are captured, and the dialogue that takes place between Sam and Kylo Ren will be the same that takes place between Poe and Kylo in the original opening of Episode 7. Sam and R2-D2 are able to escape when the Twi'leks launch a counterattack on the First Order. The two steal a TIE fighter and jump through hyperspace towards Endor, but the First Order is able to track their own ships through hyperspace, and Kylo Ren, hell-bent on capturing Sam, orders a squadron of TIE fighters to retrieve him. Sam and R2 are shot down over Endor, and as they descend uncontrollably down towards the surface, Sam realizes that they are headed straight for a huge piece of debris from the Death Star. R2 and Sam both leap from the doomed TIE fighter, with Sam landing in a river down below and R2-D2 landing in a junkyard of debris, damaging him and causing him to activate his emergency protocols and shut himself down. We now cut to another section of the Death Star debris. Kyra is racing her speeder through what is known as the Graveyard. Fields of rubble from the Death Star that almost seem to form a forest of metal. She tries a few fancy tricks on her speeder before entering a section of the graveyard where a band of scavengers are working. Kyra swerves to avoid hitting a clueless scavenger who is carrying a heavy piece of metal across the field. Kyra loses control of her speeder, resulting in a crash. Infuriated, the scavenger's junk boss, known as the Blobfish, reprimands Kyra for sneaking off from her job, and he reminds her that she was warned to not race her piece of junk through the graveyard while the others were working. Kyra gets into a heated argument with the Blobfish, and he cuts her off by ordering his thugs to confiscate the speeder. But Kyra activates an electric field that shocks anyone who touches her speeder, and she hops onto it and soars away before anyone can stop her. Kyra flies back to her home in the forest, a broken down Imperial Walker that is overgrown with foliage. We see the same scene from the original film that shows Kyra's collection of Rebel and Resistance memorabilia, and just how lonely her life really is. There could be a moment where she sits atop the walker at night, eating her dinner while staring out into the stars. From the trees up above, she can hear an Ewok child chattering to itself while watching the stars through a homemade telescope. The Ewok's parents call their child back inside to put them to bed, embracing them warmly as they kiss them goodnight. Kyra sighs with envy as she watches the exchange above her before going to bed herself. The next day, Kyra goes about her business as usual. She's scouring through the graveyard, salvaging any pieces of machinery that she can find. When she comes across a damaged and deactivated R2-D2, Kyra quickly covers up the droid, straps it to her speeder, and races home. She excitedly repairs and reassembles R2, bringing him back online. But R2 is confused. He doesn't know where he's at, what year it is, or even what his designation number is. His memory core is damaged during the crash, and without anywhere else to go, the bubbly R2-D2 agrees to stay with Kyra and starts helping her with her work. With R2 at her side, the little astromech proves to be a huge advantage for Kyra, helping her acquire way more parts in half the time that she normally would have found on her own. While rummaging through the Emperor's ruined office that had sunk underwater, Kyra and R2 come across the remnants of a map that has charted out all the secret Jedi temples located across the galaxy. Kyra is fascinated by the map, and she takes it back home with her. The rest of the scavengers become jealous of Kyra's performance, and they try to steal R2-D2 from her. But she beats them all up with her staff, intimidating the rest of the scavengers from trying to claim her droid. The 1/4 portion scene plays out the same way it does in the original, except when the Blobfish tries to purchase R2-D2, instead of telling him that the droid isn't for sale, Kyra bargains the price upwards until the Blobfish agrees to 100 portions. But when the Blobfish compliments her by saying, "That's my girl," she changes her mind and decides that R2 isn't for sale. She tells her boss that the conditions have changed. When the Blobfish gets flustered, Kyra explains that this sudden change of heart is fair payback for all the times the Blobfish has dishonestly changed deals on her and the rest of the scavengers in the colony. "You're nothing, Kyra. You hear me? The dirt under my boots is worth more than you. That's why your useless parents marooned you here." But Kyra ignores him and walks away, earning glances of respect from many of the other scavengers in Nema Outpost. While this scene didn't make it into the final film, it was included in Episode 7's novelization, and I think it lends itself well to this fiery and insubordinate version of Kyra that I have in this rewrite. Right around the same time that this is happening, a traveling caravan of Ewoks arrive at the outpost, and Sam dismounts his pony, thanks the Ewoks with a handful of credits, and begins scanning through the outpost, searching intently for something. R2-D2 catches sight of Sam from a distance, and his memory comes back to him as he excitedly recognizes his old master. Bleeping with joy, R2 goes to Sam, and the two are happily reunited, with Sam being introduced to Kyra, who brings both of them back to her house. She shows Sam the star map she and R2 found, and Sam is intrigued by it. Sam notices Kyra's unusual looking speeder, and Kyra proudly proclaims that she built it all by herself, using salvaged scrap that she found in the graveyard. "It's not bad, but it's nothing like my ship. You've probably never heard of it. It's a humble freighter by the name of Millennium Falcon." Kyra sits up with excitement at the sound of the legendary ship's name. Taking note of this, Sam boasts that he is the son of Han Solo and is the captain of the Millennium Falcon. But he was stranded on Endor when he and his crew had to split up to avoid capture from the First Order. Kyra is instantly enchanted by Sam's persona as an adventurer, and she eagerly volunteers to help Sam find a ship to get off-world, on the condition that she gets to join Sam's crew of smugglers. This is the call to adventure. This is the moment where the Herald, in the form of Sam Solo, appears before our hero and summons him on a life-changing quest. As is natural for a character who is tired of their boring life and wants to experience freedom and excitement, Kyra immediately jumps to the call. She buys into Sam's bravado and charisma. But just as Kyra agrees to help Sam, an alarm goes off on her repurposed Y-Wing navigator, warning her that there are stormtroopers approaching her home. Realizing that he's been followed, Sam provides a distraction while Kyra packs up all of her things. This is the chance where Sam gets to show off that he's not only a fast shooter, but he has style while doing it too. We see him roll, spin, and kneel, and twirl his dual pistols as he comes at the stormtroopers like Clint Eastwood's The Man with No Name. Captain Phasma enters the scene, calling Sam smuggler scum, and challenging him to a duel. Before Sam can oblige Captain Phasma's request, Kyra sets off several booby traps around her house to cover their escape as she, Sam, and R2 board her speeder and fly to the outpost. You can still keep the humor in this scene by having Sam grab Kyra's hand every time they run, and she keeps getting annoyed with him. It's a typical thing that you would expect from a rogue like Sam. On the way to the outpost, Kyra and Sam are chased by TIE fighters who fire down at them. Together, the trio steal the Blobfish's personal ship and engage the TIE fighters in the same dogfight that takes place on Jakku in the original film. When there's only one TIE fighter left, Kyra impresses Sam by predicting the pilot's next move and countering it before he even gets a chance to execute it. How did you do that? You'd probably think I'm crazy if I told you. Sam raises an eyebrow and smirks. Well, I'm not quite sure, but sometimes I know when something is about to happen. It's like a gut feeling, an instinct. Sometimes it's a thought and I can picture it in my head, and sometimes there's voices. They whisper things to me, they guide me, point me in the right direction. I can't explain it, but I've always been able to do it. That's why I've never lost a fight. Sam nods and turns back to the computer, deep in thought, as he sets a course for Felucia to rendezvous with his crew. The stormtroopers from Endor report back to Kylo Ren, who is in the middle of praying to Darth Vader's busted helmet, voicing his temptations out loud as if the spirit of his grandfather can hear them. They report their failure to capture Sam Solo, and Kylo force chokes one of them to death. Terrified, the remaining stormtrooper frantically reveals that he thinks Sam is going to Felucia, and that he has a star map that could be valuable to the First Order. Kylo Ren pauses and asks the stormtrooper to remove his helmet. The nervous trooper complies, and Kylo Ren plugs the helmet into his computer, rewinding the footage on the helmet's camera to see the star map for himself. Kylo Ren recognizes the Jedi Temple map from his time as Luke Skywalker's apprentice. He pieces together that Sam is trying to find Luke and reports this to the hologram of Supreme Leader Snoke, who is in the middle of a meeting with General Hux about their new superweapon. Once Kylo Ren explains Sam Solo's intentions, both Hux and Ren offer to personally lead hunting squads after the young pilot. Snoke is amused by this rivalry between his two commanders and decides to host a competition. Whoever can retrieve the map to Skywalker first will win the Supreme Leader's favor. We can still have the dialogue between Kylo and Snoke about the awakening in the Force, and Snoke warns his people to be on his guard. At once, Kylo leaves aboard a stealth shuttle with the Knights of Ren, while Hux mobilizes a Star Destroyer and a battalion of stormtroopers to pursue their prey. And this marks the end of Act 1. Act 2. Traditionally, films follow a 3-act structure, with the second act sometimes being split into 2. You could argue that such an action gives a film 4 acts instead of 3, but we're not going to get into that in this video. The first half of the second act is sometimes referred to as fun and games or the promise of the premise. This section of the story is where things start to get rolling for the characters. It's in the first half of the second act that the audience is delivered what was promised by the trailer. People came to watch The Force Awakens to see a fun sci-fi adventure movie where new characters and old familiar fan favorites go on a journey together to search for the missing Luke Skywalker. That is the plot. That is what people came to see. Now let's give it to them. So now Act 2 starts off in a seedy and questionable bar on Felucia. Pirates, bounty hunters, and assassins are all mingling together as Kyra, Sam, and R2-D2 walk in and see Han Solo winning a drinking competition between a group of mercenaries. Despite being in his 60s, Han outdrinks everyone while Chewbacca watches from the sidelines, and an angry gambler hands the Wookiee his bet money before storming off. One of the things that didn't sit right with me about The Force Awakens was how Han and Chewie more or less looked exactly the same way they did 30 years ago in Return of the Jedi. I know it's just a nitpick, but it is so unrealistic to have characters keep the same look for over 20 years, when in real life, people usually change their hair or their style, or both, in just 5 years. So for this rewrite, I want to go with the look that Han had in the concept art, where he's got facial hair and a long trench coat that harkens back to gunslingers from the Old West. That fits Han's character perfectly, since a lot of people like to refer him as the cowboy of Star Wars. There's also this artwork that shows Chewie with a bionic forearm, and a note that says it was a war wound. I'd want to keep that, but also add something new to Chewie. Maybe a piece of Wookiee armor like a pauldron on his left shoulder or something. I like that idea a lot better than Chewbacca wearing the same exact belt and nothing else for 30 plus years. Plus, Chewie has relatively gone through the entire Star Wars saga without so much as a scratch, and that's amazing considering how much action he sees. So it'd be a nice touch to show that Chewie, like Han, is a little weathered and has obviously survived some close calls. For the sake of this video, we'll just say that he lost his arm during the reclamation of his home world of Kashyyyk from the Empire. Kyra is doing her best to contain her excitement at meeting a legendary rebel hero, but Han, who is very drunk and looks worse for wear, quickly gets impatient with Kyra and tells Sam to make sure that his girlfriend keeps her voice down. This can be a don't meet your heroes moment for Kyra. Sam apologizes for his dad's behavior as he and Chewie help Han get back on board the Falcon. Once aboard the ship, Kyra figures out that Sam was lying to her, that he never was the captain of the Falcon. He's just a smuggler who works with his dad and Chewbacca. Sam admits that he duped Kyra just so that she could help him escape Endor, but he tells her that it all worked out in the end now that she's a part of their crew. Han sobers up and remains unconvinced that they should bring Kyra along. Han goes to tell her that they're going to drop Kyra off at the next planet, but he stops when he sees her studying the star map. When Han finds out that he used to belong to the Emperor and that it charts all of the hidden Jedi temples in the galaxy, an idea comes to his head. He explains to Kyra that after the Emperor's fall, Luke Skywalker began training a new generation of Jedi. But after one of his apprentices betrayed him and destroyed the Order, Luke, out of depression, went into self-exile at the first Jedi temple ever built. But nobody knows where the first temple is at, and everyone has been trying to find Luke for years. Luke Skywalker? I thought he was just a myth. One of the scavengers back home said that he met Luke Skywalker, and that he gave him a scar with his lightsaber, but nobody believed him. Han reveals that with the map, they actually have a real chance at finding Luke. And with the First Order posing a threat to everyone, they owe it to the galaxy to at least try. A montage sequence can show the crew of the Millennium Falcon traveling to different planets on the map and scouting the abandoned temples before moving on to the next one. This could be a great opportunity to show some really cool visuals and some beautiful scenery. This could also be the time to show Kyra bonding with the rest of the characters. We can see Han showing her how to pilot the Falcon, Sam giving Kyra lessons on how to use a blaster, and Chewbacca playfully wrestling with Kyra when she snags some snacks off his plate, and R2-D2 handing Kyra some tools as they work together on the Falcon's maintenance. The Knights of Ren will be following the Falcon's trail this entire time, gradually catching up to them as the montage continues. Han walks into Kyra's room late one night to find her tinkering. Hey, Kyra, there's some leftovers in the cockpit, if you want to grab some before Chewie gets to it. Han is about to walk away when Kyra stops him and asks if she can talk to the old smuggler about something personal. Kyra opens up to Han and tells him that she was abandoned by her parents at a young age, and that she's never known what it feels like to be in a family. She's wanted one her whole life, yet, now that she seems to have one in the form of the Millennium Falcon's crew, she doesn't know how to respond to it. She spent so much time looking out for herself and being a survivalist that she doesn't know how to work well with others, or what it means to actually be in a family. Han empathizes with her, and explains that he was once in Kyra's shoes. He grew up alone and unwanted, but eventually met Chewie, and after that, a group of friends who taught him the meaning of family. Han tells her that families always look out for one another, and to not make the same mistakes that he did. Kyra asks for more details, but Han just cryptically tells her that he's been running from his problems for years, and that it's torn his family apart. If there was anything that he could do to go back in time and fix it, he would take that chance in the blink of an eye. If you've got something worth holding on to, kid, fight for it, for as long as you can, because there's no guarantee it'll be there tomorrow. Han lets Kyra contemplate on this as he goes to check on Chewie and Sam. See, one of the things that Rey was missing in The Force Awakens was that she didn't have a character arc. As our main protagonist, Finn's arc should have been given to Rey, not only because she is the star of the sequel trilogy, but because it leads nicely into her arc that comes up in Episode 8. According to K.M. Weiland, a character arc is made up of 4 parts: a lie, a ghost, a want, and a need. The lie is a misconception that the character has of themselves or the world around them. The ghost is the reason that supports the lie. It's why the character believes the lie to be true. The want is the character's strongest desire. It's their motivation to acquire this want that drives the plot forward. The need is the flaw that the character has to recognize within themselves and overcome if they are to succeed in acquiring their want. Character arcs are so important because they feed directly into the story's themes. Think Story did a really good video where he examined Weiland's system of character arcs by using Luke Skywalker from Episode 4 as his example. So for this rewrite, we're going to apply the same structure to Kyra. Her lie is that she believes she is unworthy of love, friendship, and family. The ghost that supports this lie is that Kyra grew up as a lowly orphan amongst a band of selfish scavengers after her parents abandoned her. She's never done anything special in her life, and she doesn't really have anyone who believes in her. Kyra's want is to find a sense of acceptance and belonging. She wants to fit in and be loved, but her need is that she has to stop being a selfish survivalist and learn how to become a team player by putting the needs of others before hers. As someone who was forced to learn how to survive on their own from a young age, it's very natural for Kyra to become selfish, because if she didn't put her own needs first, she would have died a long time ago. This provides Kyra with a natural and organic flaw. She is a byproduct of her surroundings. The scavenger code is one of self-centeredness and greed. This arc will feed directly into the traditional Star Wars theme of family and friendship. Episode 7's theme seems to largely revolve around friendship, as showcased by the relationship Finn forms with Rey and Poe, but I want to take that step further and make it about finding a family as well. Now, back to the story. The crew's next stop is at a temple that is carved into a mountainside. Inside the caves, they find criminals looting the Jedi Temple for antiques and ancient relics. Han recognizes the thieves as the Guavian Death Gang and Kanja Club, and Sam accidentally slips and gives away their position, resulting in a standoff. The dialogue between Han and the two gangs can play out the same way it does in the original film, but instead of immediately releasing the Rathdars, the conversation ends with a firefight between the three parties. It's clear that Han owes money all over the Outer Rim, and his debt is finally catching up to him. Not to mention the First Order has placed a hefty bounty on Sam's head. The fight comes to a screeching halt as the ground begins to shake, the walls start to crack, and rumbling noises echo throughout the corridors. I got a bad feeling about this. 2 Rancors burst through the wall. You woke them up, you idiot! This can lead to the same fun action sequence from the original, where the Rathdars are unleashed on the gangs, except our heroes will be dodging the pair of angry Rancors as the monsters chase all 3 groups down hallways, knocking over pillars, and throwing boulders at them. The reason why I chose Rancors over Rathdars was because in the sequel trilogy, the filmmakers seem to be taking the saying, out with the old, in with the new, way too hard. It's not even a gradual transition from one vision to the next. This is Star Wars. You can't just throw out characters, creatures, and lore that have been around for decades and actually hold meaning to a lot of fans. Way too many times in the sequel trilogy do we see old school Star Wars concepts being thrown out the window in favor of new ones that really don't hold as much significance to the audience as the originals did. I'm not saying I hate any of the new aliens, but there just seems to be no respect for the franchise's elders. I mean, look at the Twi'leks, for example. They have been a Star Wars staple since the very beginning, and yet, not a single one can be found in episodes 7 or 8. It's small things like that that alienate the audience, no pun intended. So that's why I chose to stick with Rancors. They're a traditional Star Wars monster that fans are familiar with but haven't seen a whole lot of. Anyways, this could be a really fun scene. The Rancors can swing pillars like they're baseball bats, the Guavian Death Gang and Kanja Club can try different gadgets to restrain the raging beasts, Han can push a gangster in front of a Rancor like he does in the original, and R2 can use his thrusters to fly around a Rancor's face and distract it, while Chewie tosses Sam on top of the creature so that Sam can blind him with a shot to the eye. This next bit is critical though. There will be a moment where one of the heroes will get themselves in trouble and ask Kyra for help, and Kyra will shout back, "I'm a little busy at the moment, pull your own weight." This act of selfishness will almost cost said hero's life, and they are only spared because another companion from the Falcon's crew will jump in and save them at the last minute. One of the Rancors will pin Kyra up against a corner, and Kyra is absolutely horrified. She's freaking out. Her blaster isn't having any effect on the creature, all of her bravery is gone. She's never lost a fight. She's beaten up bullies and thugs before, but nothing like this. Not a huge savage force of nature like a Rancor. There's nothing she can do. The Rancor reaches down to grab her, and Kyra tries to hide in between 2 rocks. All goes silent. The giant claws hover over her. A faint whisper is heard calling out to Kyra.
This place, a conduit through which the entire force. Luminous beams are weak.
And she screams defiantly at the Rancor. The ground cracks at Kyra's feet, and a powerful blast of energy, almost like wind, explodes outwards from Kyra. The Rancor stumbles in confusion. Kyra, unthinking and purely in survival mode, wildly begins flailing her arms at the monster, commanding all of the nearby rocks to pummel the Rancor. After being bombarded by the rocks and boulders, the Rancor is driven away and shifts its attention to the gangsters. Kyra passes out in exhaustion, and Chewbacca scoops her up in his arms as they all run out of the temple. The heroes board the Millennium Falcon and blast off into space, leaving the surviving gangsters to contend with the Rancors. As the group recovers from the attack, Sam checks in on Kyra. She is still shaken up from the encounter with the Rancors, and Sam hands her a glass of whiskey to calm her nerves. Sam tells her that she used the Force against the Rancors, and explains that is why she is able to predict things before they happen. Kyra is scared of the raw power that she felt in that moment of desperation. Sam encourages her that they need to find Luke even more now so that he can teach her how to control the Force within her. With the right teacher, Kyra won't have to be afraid of her abilities and can learn to see them as a gift instead of a curse. Kyra asks Sam how he knows so much about the Force, and he quietly confesses that his older brother, Ben, like his mom, was born with the Force in them. and Ben went off to go join Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, but Ben was lost when the Academy fell. The following scene will be the midpoint or halfway mark of the film. The Millennium Falcon arrives at its next destination, the Jedi Temple on Florrum. To the crew's pleasant surprise, they find the temple occupied by friendly clerics who welcome them to their humble abode. These clerics belong to the Church of the Force, a religious group of non-Force sensitive individuals who praise and worship the light side of the Force. They are led by Lor San Tekka, the guy from the beginning of Episode 7 who originally gets cut down by Kylo Ren. While eating dinner together, Lor San Tekka reveals to the crew that when Luke first started to revive the Jedi Order, Lor San Tekka had been recruited by Skywalker for his vast knowledge on the Force. Lor San Tekka worked as the Order's historian and librarian until Luke's apprentice betrayed the Jedi and brought their organization to ruin once again. Afterwards, Lor San Tekka established the Church of the Force in an attempt to bring positive spirituality back to the galaxy. Here it is finally revealed that Ben Solo, Han's firstborn and Sam's older brother, was the traitor who destroyed the Jedi Order. Sam and Han are both embarrassed when Kyra learns about this, but Han quickly changes the topic when he shows Lor San Tekka the star map and asks if he has any leads on Skywalker's location. Lor San Tekka admits that he does not know where Luke is, but he believes that an old associate of his, Maz Kanata, the pirate queen of Takodana, can give them some clues. Before they leave, Lor San Tekka is able to tell that Kyra is Force sensitive and encourages her to practice and learn more about her abilities until she is able to find a master who can teach her how to properly use her gifts. To help her focus, Lor San Tekka gifts Kyra with a Kyber crystal necklace, something that serves as a badge of honor to all members of the Church of the Force. The crew of the Falcon thank Lor San Tekka and his priests for their hospitality and chart a course for Takodana. But just as the Falcon leaves Florrum's orbit, another ship lands at the temple. Kylo Ren and his knights storm the temple and take the clerics hostage, while Kylo questions Lor San Tekka. Now, when we add the exchange between Kylo Ren and Lor San Tekka that takes place in the original film, there's a lot more meaning and weight behind the conversation because we've already established the emotional connection between these two characters. And if the audience hasn't already pieced it together, they'll start to realize throughout the conversation that Kylo Ren is truly Ben Solo. The Knights of Ren proceed to slaughter the entire Church of the Force, and Lor San Tekka shares the same fate as his counterpart in the original film. One of the clerics will shout, "Takodana! They went to Takodana!" before being executed. Kylo orders his men back aboard the ship. Their prey is finally within reach. And that concludes part 1 of my rewrite for Star Wars Episode 7. If you like the changes I made or have any ideas that you would like to share, go ahead and comment them down below. I'd really love to hear what you guys think and what could have been done better. As always, don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Be on the lookout for part 2 as it will be coming out soon.